I'll moderate the questions from the list. So without further ado, back to Peter.
Okay, thank you, Mike, and my apologies for jumping the gun. So let's get on with this right away. The topics that I plan to cover today are the following: the meaning and uses of optimization options. This is important to have a common understanding of these pieces of the functionality in order to evaluate various scenarios as you are trying to make choices. The move project functionality to move the resource plan and the project plan in time. Templates and copy project as aids to creating new projects and new projects with resource plans. The use of saved PDW files. Looking at some of the reports and modules that help with understanding what your scenario is doing in terms of headcount or total demand and so forth. I want to float an idea that's a possibility for use, which is to add generic resources to a pending node in your resource tree. And finally, to show you a comparison report, which is new and has been stimulated by one of our customers. So the one thing I do want to caution you, and I will try to remember to say when I'm talking about something, some of these things are in the very latest releases, and therefore you may not have some of them in your environment. I will try to be aware of that and mention them, but most of this is in fact available to all of you currently. So to start, I'm going to do a get data. And the first thing to note is I mentioned the pending resources. I've created a pending node on my resource tree, and I have created a pending node on my project tree. The idea here, and this is not necessarily the only way to do this, this is an example of one way to do it, is that in my planning session, looking forward for the next year, 2 years, 3, 4 years, I may want to register new projects in this pending node and express all of their resource plans and any other plans I want about them. Then if I do not do a multi-select, but instead take out my division or line of business or my company, I won't see the pending assignments and I won't see the pending projects until it becomes appropriate to see them. So it's a way of doing my planning and actually saving it to the database and still not having it interrupt routine operations. So I'm doing a multi-select, as you can see, and in this case I'm checking out both projects and resources. It is possible to do planning without checking out the resources, leaving them unchecked, and what would happen then is when you have created a resource plan for a new project which you would save, you could then save the assignments by submitting them as requests. I'm not going to follow that chain today, but that's a possibility. The other thing to notice is that I've got the current year selected here, and I'm taking out 60 months, 5 years worth of time period, in order to be able to manipulate the various projects that I'm going to be adding to the portfolio and having them extend as long as necessary. So the first thing I'm going to do is talk about what I said before, the meaning and uses of the optimization options. And this is very fundamental stuff. It's really one of the primary reasons behind the existence of this product. So first I'm going to sort by resource name, which gets all of my skill assignments at the top, and I'm going to turn off optimization. So the first thing to notice is something about skill assignments. I have a skill assignment here for a CAD person in engineering. I have a double E in engineering. But down here, I have an assignment for a double E from electrical engineering, one from mechanical, one from peripherals, etc. So the important distinction here is that a skill assignment, when you're optimizing, in normal cases, the optimization is going to look within the target resource node for a person who has unused capacity that can be applied to the skill assignment. So for instance, in normal cases, for satisfying this double E assignment, I would not look at anything beyond the electrical engineering resources. But for this assignment, I would look at every resource in the entire engineering organization to find someone who has unused capacity that could satisfy the demand. So that's the first distinction to keep in mind. The second thing, and I'm going to look, in this case, I'm going to filter on the Tozzle project. And you can see here that the red color highlighting is indicating shortfall. And of course, shortfall for skill assignments is 100% of the demand by definition. The highlighting here at shortfall means there is not a resource currently identified who can provide that level of effort, that demand. And so in this case, I have 3 skill assignments, all of which are red, and I have one resource by name, a person assignment, some of which the demand is red or is in a shortfall condition. Now the question I'm posing and about to answer is what optimization would you use, and what is the difference in meaning among these? And really the only 2 I'm interested in for now are the first 2. So I'm going to click Use Unused for Skills. And you see right away what that does. It has gone out and looked at the resource pool and all the other demand, and it has identified resources within engineering and product operation who have these skills and who have unused capacity that can be used to satisfy these assignments. And so you can say about that first option, Use Unused for Skills, that it leaves highlighting on the resource assignments. And the resource assignments, when you see this highlighting, it means that during those periods, there are other resource assignments for that same person which consume all of their capacity, and therefore this cannot be satisfied by the person. So I'll double click, and I can see that Jeanette is needed at 0.4 down to here, 0.6, 0.7, and therefore cannot supply all of 0.5. So the Use Unused for Skills is a way of leaving highlighting on overloaded resources, resources that have too many named resource assignments. Now, one of the things that we've said from the beginning at PDWare is that it's critically important to honestly and truly express the full demand for resources on a project. Don't shave the demand estimate in order to make it fit within the people you have, but rather be sure to capture the full and total demand. But on the other hand, it's also not good to oversubscribe people. And so where it's unrealistic, as in this case, where this person is 20% overloaded or approximately, you would not want to expect someone to work that level of effort over a 6-month period of time. And in that case, you would want to do something like our convert shortfall to skill. So if I select these highlighted areas and I convert shortfall to skill with the right-click menu, I will get rid of the highlighting here. I have now a skill assignment for integration QC, and by virtue of the optimization I have to try to satisfy skill assignments, I can see that this could be fully satisfied. Now, the other side of that is, when would you want to see the tools optimize allocation use it for all, meaning for skill assignments and resource assignments? And in this case, it's really more from the point of view of, say, a portfolio manager or someone who's looking across the whole organization to see, do I have unused resources with skills that could be applied to any shortfall, whether it's a skill assignment or a person? And if I click that, I see that I get some additional improvement in the staffing and achievability profile for my portfolio. And there are other options as well that we'll talk about later. But the thing to remember is what I've told you so far, given the effort forecast and this notion of the skill assignment, the level on the resource tree at which it's expressed has significant meaning. So if instead of a double E for all of engineering, I had asked for one from electrical, or even then a subgroup of that, it would circumscribe the search that the optimization does. And in the tools optimized area, you have this search all resources. And what that does is it systematically searches up the resource tree from the target assignment. So for instance, where we had the double E from electrical engineering, if we were unable to fully satisfy the shortfall on that assignment, we would go up to the next level of the resource tree, searching the peer organizations from the target organization. And if we still had an unsatisfied shortfall, we would go up the next level, and eventually we would search the entire organization that's been taken out on your get data. So that's the meaning of search all resources and how it relates to the use of your shortfall. The third option, of course, is use lower priority allocations. And what that means is, if I have any resource assignments and allocation to lower priority projects and I have higher priority need, I will steal that resource allocation from the lower priority projects and give it, quote unquote, to the higher priority project. And I'm not going to further discuss that option today. Okay, so I am now going to get rid of my skill example project and do something that I usually say don't do, which is really delete a record. In this case, I know I don't need it. And the starting place, one starting place for doing some planning is to just move projects around to see if they can get staffed and solve a problem. So currently we're identifying that we have some problems on these lower priority projects, but what if we moved this project out, let's say, 6 months? And the check mark says move phase dates along with this move, so that would move the scheduled time for the project. And let's see, so that cleans up that problem, and we can do the same on another lower priority project if we want. Let's move this one 4 months, and that will help some more. So you can play some scenario games like that from the very beginning. But now what we're really doing is we're planning for 2014. And I'm going to start by creating 2 or 3 new projects by using a template. Now, the way a template gets created in the first place is for an administrator to pick a project that is a model for a type of project. So I might have picked at some point in the past my BVSC project, where it's a very typical of a large product development program. And I would simply go to my database menu and create a template from it and give the template a name. So that's how we've gotten them created. And there's an option to roll up demand by resource assignments into skill assignments, so that all templates really should be have only skill assignments in their resource plans. So now I'm going to make use of some of those templates that I've created in the past. And so I'll select, my major program, because this is going to be a big product development program. And I'm going to call this my Able Release Program. I'm going to indicate that it's to start in January 2014. And this is the level of effort in the template. This is the number of periods. This is the starting priority. And I'm satisfied with those. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And I'm going to do another one. I'm going to get template again this time, and it'll be a major program, and I'm going to say it's my Baker release. And same thing, 2014. Okay, and one more. And this time it's going to be a smaller program. It's going to be my Scrum project. It has only 12 FTE work months in it. That's fine. These are short, fuse, low effort. Oops, I moved it into the wrong place. I made a mistake. Now, though, as you know, I can move it 12 months and get it where I should have put it in the first place. Okay, so now I've got a starting point for some scenario planning. And at this point, I could do what I said earlier, that is create a saved PDW file. And I go to the File, Save As option, and I'm going to call this my base 2014 plan. And notice that when I got data, I checked out resources and projects. If when I leave PDWare, I uncheck the drop locks option on the close dialog, in other words, leave my locks on, I could come back and reopen this now saved PDW file called base 2014, and I could immediately go to database save data. So now I have an option. I can do more with the templates, or I can use the copy project technology. So let's do that first, because this is not my full staffing for 2014, 15, and 16. I'm going to copy project. And notice the name is as is. That means we're going to use the names here and give them number extensions. I'll use the same start date, but I'm going to create 4 copies of each of these, and I'm going to stagger them by 5-month increments. Now I could turn off the copy effort here. And by the way, notice there is a roll up to skill. If you are copying effort, you have an option to roll up to skill or not to. In this case, these are all skill only, so it doesn't matter. And I'm just going to click OK. And we've just gone off and created these new projects with the original targeted resource plan and spread them out in time as I've specified. And I'm going to do the same thing for my Scrum releases. So these are short fuse, fast track projects. So I'm going to capture a bunch of them. Let's capture 10 of them and say they're delayed or staggered by 3 months each. And so I click OK again. And now all of a sudden I have a fairly substantial resource plan building for a portfolio of projects that are typical of the types that I've originally derived from a template. Now at this point, I can do a number of things with the very standard features of the software. For instance, I could go to the reports module and I could look at the shale chart. And in fact, I can look at these things side by side, so let's do that. Let's look at them side by side vertically. And I can see at a glance what my new resource profile looks like, and with the projects that I've added, how they're stacking up against my current capacity. And I can see that I've got some big gaps here in the middle of 2014. So I could come back in here and I could create a bunch of additional projects. Let's say I'm going to create a couple of more, because I think if my demand doesn't exceed capacity by a little bit, I'm not doing enough demand planning. I'm going to create another set of projects here. And in fact, I could even move them back and say I'm going to start them in December of 2013, start them a bit earlier. Let's see what that does. Okay, so that's increased my demand level a little bit. It's still probably not high enough. And in addition, in the middle of 2014, I have available capacity, at least in terms of total headcount. So I'm going to go ahead and create some additional Scrum projects. And let's say I create another, I don't know, 5 of them. And don't shift them at all, just have them all occur at the same time. And that takes me above, and I've still got some gaps, so I could fill this in at any point. Now, one thing that I failed to do at the beginning and should have done was to have moved all these new projects from my production environment into my pending project node. And so now I can come in here and multi-select, edit project, and simply put them in the pending node, so that when later I get data, all of the assignments to these projects will not appear unless I take out the pending nodes. The other area that we could look at now is we could look at our resource utilization chart. This is a chart that you currently have. And in the resource utilization chart, this red line at the bottom is the demand shortfall line, which means that there's this level of gap in the total number of resources. So I'm short 20 for a brief period here at the beginning of the year, and then I'm short 15 or so for most of the middle of 2015. So I could, by the same token, I've created a bunch of projects in this pending project node, I could, over here on my resource side, put in a level of capacity in this what I call contractors all skills resource. Now notice what I've done here. I've created in my pending resource node this one resource that has every skill available. This is not a realistic resource. This is a for planning purposes only resource. And so if I forget what I said, something like 20. So if I just say from March here for 2 years, I'm going to add 25, let's say, resources. And I extend that over through 2016, which is when I have all of my effort. And then I come back and I look at my utilization picture, or my portfolio picture. Notice that the color highlighting hasn't changed, and that's because that pending resource is not available to satisfy any of the demand because the wrong organization is named. But if I then say, search across the entire organization to see if there are any resources that have the skill, we see significant improvement in the ability to staff, and so we have a picture now of what it might take to do all of this work. Another resource we have besides this notion of creating a skill resource, I'm going to take off search all resources, is we have the capacity planning module. And this I can apply and look at what it would mean to apply it, for my current portfolio, which has quite a bit of shortfall and quite a bit of unused capacity. So if I say without any changes in capacity, if we were to optimize, what would we add? And this is telling me we need to add significantly in the EE skill category and in the manufacturing, integration, QC, packaging, and design, and quite a bit less in these other skill areas. And there's no skill that is in significant excess. So there are all kinds of tools of this type that can be applied to the various scenarios that you've been creating. Now, I've just created a scenario with a lot of new projects and a lot of additional resource for staffing it. There is another new piece of functionality that we have. Let me get rid of some of these modules. We have the so-called comparison report, and I'm going to launch it. And basically the idea here is this report allows you to pick a base PDW environment and a compare PDW environment, and then compares them side by side. And so I'm going to load the base. I can load it either from the current workbook or from a file. So I'm going to, actually I'm going to go up to my, well, let's do my base. So it's loading the project data, the resource and capacity data, and the effort forecast data from, I did the wrong thing there. Oh, I see. That's the wrong name. Let me do this. I'll do scenario 1. So it's loaded effort forecast, project data, and resource data from scenario 1. And now I'm going to say load my compare from scenario number 3. And let's just see how they stack up. So what this is doing now is it's produced a demand comparison showing all the projects and their previous demand, current demand, and the difference and so on. It tells me that I've added 12 projects and 218 assignments, deleted a whole bunch, changed some values on resources, and so on. In addition, it gives me a lot of options so that, for instance, I can show a capacity line. So in my current compare scenario, I've increased the capacity by by 20 heads over this period of time. I can at any point change the chart series by selecting a different field on the project data sheet. So for instance, if I select domain, I can see what my current values are. I'm looking at the current value type. I can right-click and show the base values. I can right-click and show differences or a difference percent, and so on. And I can do that kind of selection and display for any field from any of the worksheets. So for instance, if we do it from resource data, well, this may not be too interesting, but let me show all values. We could say do it by region and then see what the compare or scenario 3 version is. So this is a new piece of functionality that's part of 6.1.1 release. The nice thing about this particular report is that it's exportable. That is, you can save it and do these selections of different value types independently of being in PDWare, because all of the base data and the current compare data for projects, resources, and effort is captured and included in the file. You can't change the files you're comparing, but you can do all of these operations to look at different cases. And on top of that, you have all of the data in each of these value types for the 2 periods that you're comparing, so that you can do anything else you want. And this workbook is not protected, so you can do anything you want with it, change the charts and so on. So that is the comparison report. Finally, after all of the planning you've been doing and you've been looking at these various options, you might be looking at the cost comparisons, etc. You would choose one of these scenarios. You would open it and select, in this case, I put them in this location. So if I double click, I just made a mistake. I'm sure you've noticed, and any of you who've done this before will have noticed the same thing. When I opened the saved scenario, I forgot to uncheck the drop locks option. So I'm going to get data again just to illustrate that. And this time, when I open my saved scenario, and let's say it's scenario 3, the important step I missed was to uncheck the drop locks, because when I open my saved scenario file, my locks will be still set in the database. And notice that the check locks toolbar button has a question mark. opening from a saved PDW file, it doesn't yet know whether there are locks, but if you ask it to check, it will tell you what you have checked out. And at this point, all I need to do to save this plan, this future plan, is to go to Database, Save Data. And I would be done. I'm not going to do that because in this case I don't want to save all of this data to my database. So that is essentially the part of the story we would like to share with you today. I'll leave you with the notion that there are many ways to do the scenario planning. For instance, some people may choose to initiate projects and save them to the database and distribute the responsibility for creating the skill staffing level to various of the resource managers. That is another option. Another option is to create new projects and save them to the database. For instance, for the ABLE release, even before you have a resource plan, and right-click on them and create a financial plan so that you, for each of your new projects, you would have a financial plan that lays out its costs of expenses and various other things as well as revenue. So in this case, I don't have any financial plan for the ABLE project, but I can insert a financial assignment. Oops, a little bit of a problem here. And I think this will still be a problem, yes. So there's a bug here that is interrupting this. Anyway, we would create a financial plan for this project, save it, and then at some point later compare that with the other financial plans and make decisions based on the financials rather than the headcount and the total dollar spend based on the resource requirements. So at this point, I think I would like to end the discussion of scenario planning 1 and open this up for questions. So Mike, do you want to take it away?
Absolutely. Thanks, Peter. That's a lot of information in a short time, even for those of us who are well-versed in the product. Let me go through a set of the questions that have accumulated. The first one is from Ted, and let me paraphrase. As you were creating, Peter, projects, both from templates and using the copy project, where do the templates go when they're created? And then as you create the projects, either from templates or using copy projects, what project node do they go into by default? We noticed that you later moved them into pending. Could that have been done at creation? Go ahead.
Well, good. Those are good questions. So the first question, where do the templates go? When you select a project from which to create a template, in other words, it's going to become the source of a template. Let's say we're going to use Peconic. Peconic has this staffing profile of level of effort and types of skills. And we wouldn't do it, of course, because notice that in the current Get Data, Peconic is in the middle of its development period. So we would take a project where we have the entire project beginning to end, and we would use that as the source of a template when we're satisfied. But in any case, so if we were going to use Peconic, we would select it, go to Database, create template, and we would give the project we're selecting, you could select it here as well, but it's automatically selected because you right-clicked on it or clicked on it. You give the template a name, the ABC template and a brief description. And at that point, when you click Add, it adds the template to a separate set of tables and identifies all of the data about it as a template. But it is a normal project in the database. And so, therefore, a person who has rights, sufficient rights at Get Data, can select the top, whoops, let me undo multi-select, top level node, and notice there's a templates only. And if I check that and hit OK, I'm going to have the standard PDWare environment with my templates loaded, and in there I can change any of the attributes of the template. So for instance, here on the project data sheet, I could change the duration of phases, I could change the starting budget, I could change any of the user-defined fields, and I could change the staffing profile for major program, adding or deleting assignments, changing the level of effort, and so on. So when you load with templates only, you have full control over what the template is going to look like when it's actually used. But it's stored in the standard tables and is accessed in different ways depending on what you're going to do and what rights you have. And then the other question was on copy project. And on copy project, it copies the target node, the node that it, from its source. So it will have the same node as the source. Currently there is not, I mean, it's possible to imagine that on the dialog, on the copy project dialog, you might have a drop down here to allow you to select the node into which the copies are going to go. Currently, it just copies the node of the source. Mike?
Okay, next question is from Catherine. You went through the capacity model very quickly. If you could return to that and at a little bit slower speed describe the capacity model and in particular any filters that are occurring.
Okay, so in the capacity model, you define a model. You describe what the start date and the number of periods is for modeling. You define the resource roll-up level where you're going to do the modeling, and you define whether you're going to be operating in FTE or cost. And that essentially sets up the level of granularity that the capacity model is going to be looking at. And once you've set that up, then you have some summaries up here of what your current state is. So this is telling us that the total capacity for the organization is on this row, that currently there are 181 work months of effort during these time periods, only during the model time periods of unused capacity, and there's quite a bit of demand shortfall during that time. And so what the model does is it allows you to say, given a certain change in my either spending or headcount on the resource side, how, just considering skills, the demand for skills only, how could I best balance the skills of the organization against the demand for skills and satisfy as much, for instance, of this demand shortfall as possible. And so if you say 0, that says evaluate a rebalancing of the organization without changing the number of people, just changing the skill capabilities. And when you do that, it goes through an analysis at whatever level you've specified in the model. Remember, we specified level 3 currently. We could specify level 2 or level 1. And that would look across the whole span for the possibility of satisfying demand with a change in the skills profile. By the same token, you don't have to say a 0 change. You could say, what if I had a, well, in this case, we don't have enough unused capacity to staff all the shortfall. So what if we had a 20% increase in staffing? Well, we and so on. So that's a quick review of the capacity model.
Okay, thank you. The next question is from Hayden. Can you show us where that capacity demand graph is again? And I'm not sure whether that's referring to the shale chart or the resource utilization, but if you can guide us to where those are.
Why don't I show both?
Okay.
So the reports toolbar button lists all the reports that are available. The shale charts, that's actually rather interesting. I mean, and I actually like looking at these things side by side because, as you could see before, when I changed some of the level of effort, it gets reflected over here, and I can see the effect of the changes that I'm making. So, I mean, for instance, if I don't know, added some more demand here, it would show up right away if I copy project and just click OK. So that's one place where we have that kind of capacity versus demand. And then another place is in the reports directory with the resource utilization report, which is a very simple report. It's really just summarizing all of the demand, the brown line, against the black line capacity, and then the allocation. And by the way, where demand is below capacity and there is a gap between allocation and demand, as there is here, that means there's a skills mix problem. Obviously, you can't staff demand that's above your total headcount, but whenever the demand goes below your total headcount, if your skills are in alignment, the lines will overlap. And where they deviate, you have a skills mix problem. So those are just standard reports that everybody has.
Okay, thank you, Peter. We're getting close to the end of our scheduled session. I've got a couple more questions on the books here, both from Catherine. Let's do the first one. Regarding the compare report, can we use this for a base plan from the database and then compare a saved file that might have, for instance, an accelerated plan?
Actually, you can compare anything you want. In fact, this is a good time to make a point about saved PDW files. Some of our customers have asked in the past for the ability to capture views of the database and be able to see what's changed, questions like that. And I want to point out to everyone that individually or collectively, you can, on a monthly basis, come in and do a save as and save the December 2013 PDW file for all the data you care about. And then you can save the January 1, 2014 PDW file, and the February and the March and the April and so on. And those are now historically available to you, and any one of them can be compared to any other of them. So it's not just useful for scenario planning, it's useful for what changed and how much did it change and what changed from January to June. So capturing a PDW, saved PDW file captures all the relevant data in the data pool that you've got. And if you do a consistent data pool, if the organizations remain the same and the time period remains the same, you can do these comparisons. The other point about that is that a number of our customers have wanted to have something that's saved in the database, and we have done custom work to develop a data warehouse for several of our customers, from which these comparisons can be made period to period at any point in time, and it's all right there in the database. It's not saved in PDW files, and of course that's the more desirable solution. But everyone right now has the capability of saving a monthly snapshot in a PDW file and being able to go back and use all the tools of PDWare to look at any one of them. And what was the other question, Mike?
The last question is also from Catherine. So you can save a file scenario, make edits, then decide that you want to add it to the database. Simply open the file, uncheck drop blocks, then when the file is open, simply save to the database, and the scenario is saved.
That's correct.
All right. Okay, well, on behalf of the user group organizing team, I'd like to thank you, Peter, for the presentation. Thank all the questioners and the rest of the audience. And again, stay tuned for more webinars of this variety en route to a great RPS 2014 in New Orleans in September. Thank you all.
Mike, before you sign off,
yes.
I'd like to ask everyone who has a moment to just send an email to Mike. Give him a comment about what you would like to see in these sessions, if you were satisfied or not, and if there's anything we can do to improve them.
Absolutely, and my email address is mike.overmeyer, O-V as in Victor, E-R-M-Y-E-R, @pdware.net.
Okay,
Thank you very much.